For investors, whether it be new investors or persons who want to come back to Jamaica, looking at something for retirement, look at those areas that have not yet been developed. Areas like Portland, which is developing. Look at St. Thomas, where they're doing a highway to connect Kingston, St. Thomas, and Portland. If the government is doing that, it means that other things are going to follow. So now is the most pivotal time, most interesting time to look at that area of the island.
Hey Throp fam, welcome back to another video podcast episode. If this is your first time visiting, a special welcome to you. My name is Winthrop Wellington and I am the host of On Deck with Throp, where we have meaningful conversations with people from all over the world, all about Jamaica. In today's episode, it's a special one for numerous reasons. Firstly, we have the first financial or professional finance person on our show to help advise us. And it is my pleasure to introduce financial advisor from Sagicor Investments, Jermin Vanzie. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So it's really awesome to have our first financial expert on the channel to discuss a variety of different financial and economic topics specific to Jamaica. So if you would, can you just give us a brief introduction on yourself to the audience?
Okay. Hello to YouTubers, to the family, of course. My first time here. Very excited to be here. I got up very early just for this morning, so I'm ecstatic to be here. My name is Jermin Vanzie. As you said, I am from Kingston, Jamaica. I was born in Kingston, but now I am a proud Westmorelandite. I migrated to Westmoreland in 2000, and I've been here ever since. My background is in Kingston, as I said before. I went to Merle High School, won't say the year, and I then went on to UCC, University College of the Caribbean, and now I am still a student, weird enough, with Harriet Watt Business School, where I'm pursuing my master's.
Oh, wow.
And I've been with Sagicor Investments now since 2017.
Okay.
Yes, but my background in banking started at another financial institution. That's the Bank of Nova Scotia in December of 2000. So yes, I'm old.
I wouldn't say that. I don't know how old you are, but you look good for your age.
Thank you.
So how did you get into banking and finance?
I did business in high school, and it was always a passion of mine initially, not knowing where I would have ended up. That's the weird part about it. I started out at Scotiabank as a customer service personnel.
I see.
And through my interaction with the clients, and I guess it was my work ethic, I began getting quite a bit of promotions. I was the first female relief officer for Scotia Insurance, where I was promoted to. That was in 2004, I think it was. And so being the first female officer at the time, it was pivotal, it was instrumental, it was also something that was a weight on my back because, hey, they're looking at me and judging me as the first female. So at that time, we had a pilot for relief officers to work all over the island when other advisors were either on vacation or leave or whatever it was. And so we had 3 officers and I was a sole female, so I had a point to prove. And after 1 year, I was taken off the road because I kept breaking records and showing that it could be done and so on. And they put me to a different area. I was promoted to another avenue, I should say, but I was at a specific location. And from that location, I was given another promotion where at that time, I went up to 2016, where I left as a senior insurance and investment advisor. So it was just natural progression based on my work ethic.
It seems like you have like a natural aptitude for this.
It would come off that way, but my belief has always been, if you're doing something, do it the best way you can. Be authentic, be genuine, and stick to your word.
Right.
If you are doing something, just give it your best. At the end of the day, when you leave something, your name must resonate with greatness somewhere.
That's amazing.
So that's that's just me.
And do you come from a family of entrepreneurs or businessmen and women?
Good question. I am from a single parent
I see.
background. I was raised initially, first 10 years of my life was with my late grandmother, Margaret Richards from St. Thomas, Beacon Hill, St. Thomas. And she was a school teacher at the time and a farmer, and also a single parent. Lady, she raised her children and her grandchildren, and I was really privileged. Now I can look back and say that it was a privilege for me to have been given that background, because growing up, she instilled in us, no matter what your background is, no matter who have two parents or no parents at all, or only have one, you are here for a reason. You know, she always say, I'm a millionaire's daughter. And when she said it initially, I was like, but you really don't have all the money, but she was always saying, I'm a millionaire's daughter, I'm a millionaire's daughter. And so her thing was just her pride.
I see.
Her riches was her pride. Backdrop to that though, she did inherit a lot of land from her parents.
I see.
Right. So she did have a lot of land. She had that, but she just did not have a lot of cash.
I see.
So she would have to find that entrepreneurial spirit within herself to be able to take care of her grandchildren and raise them in a way that, she was very serious about it. Not one of her grandchildren would ever be locked up. Not one of her grandchildren will ever get in any form of trouble. No matter what we did, we had to be the best at what we do. So that was instilled in us from early coming up. And I won't say who my relatives are, but we do have judges. I do have a judge as a cousin. I have a relative who works with the Office of the Prime Minister, who will say who that is. But we do have a lot of professionals in our family, and we're very proud. We're from a very, very proud race, proud background. We know our African ancestry, weird enough. So that is something that was also passed down to us. So it might be a situation where right now you might not have a lot of funds, you might not have a lot of cash, but guess what? The knowledge that was instilled in you growing up, no matter what you're going through, you must be able to motivate yourself and build up on yourself to propel yourself to the next aspect of where your life is.
And it seems like your grandmother really instilled a lot of these core principles and values, not just in you, but just from your cousins and the rest of your family.
She did. I remember when I was much younger, going to school, I went to Bath College School in St. Thomas. And from where we lived to the school, it was about 5 miles or more. And there was a lot of hill and going back and forth. It was very painful, especially as a young child growing up.
Right.
And there were days when I went to school barefoot. I was a barefooted child going to school, and I had to go every single day. And whether rain was falling or the sun was out, we had to go, and she would check our books every single day if there was homework. So it wasn't about where we were in the moment.
Right.
It was always, where do you want to be? And weird enough, when I was much younger, I always wanted to be an air hostess. I had no idea what an air hostess was, but it just sounded so good, and it sounded like it is because of my pride and the pride that was instilled in me. That is what I wanted to be, right? Until I found out what it really was.
Right.
I was like, no, my grandma raised me better than that. No shade to the flight attendants, but you just know you are destined for greatness, and once that is instilled in you from a young age, no matter what comes your way, you're gonna have to succeed, and everything will come to pass. Today will be a memory at some point in time. So if you're gonna do something, just do the best that you can, and whatever footprint you will leave behind, or whatever footprint I leave behind, it has to be that I helped someone one way or the other. That's just Jermin.
And speaking of helping people, can you just give us a bit of understanding of your direct job responsibilities in your current role at Sagicor Investments?
Okay, so currently I serve as a financial advisor, and what that entails is that for every person who I have the pleasure of sitting with, we create a financial plan. And it's not a situation where there is a one cap fits everyone.
I see.
Everyone is different. I have to get to know my clients before I can make a recommendation. There are some persons who might come in and say, oh, I want to buy some stocks, and they have no idea what a stock is. They have no idea how the market works. Or they might say, I want something that is going to give me the highest interest rate, and they have no idea what are the repercussions of that and what comes with that.
Right.
So it's my responsibility now to sit with a client and say, tell me about yourself. So I have to know the person's background. I have to know where they are right now. I have to know where they want to be in another 5 years, 10 years. And I also, for my own needs, I have to know what is their understanding of the financial market, meaning, are you comfortable with just having a savings account? It might seem very, blanket for some persons. Why would I just want to have a regular savings account? But for some persons, it is what their risk tolerance will allow them to do. Some persons might want to buy stocks, but the market is not for them. They'll come and I've had that where a person say, oh, a new company is coming out, an IPO is coming out, and I want to buy into this, and I just want to take off the interest when it comes available. And you really have to go back and say, oh no, this is not for you. And some persons will be bold enough to say, oh, I don't like risk at all, but I want stocks. And you say, no, this is not for you. Or some persons might really want the stocks, but it is really not suited for them for an individual company. So I might say to them, all right, let us look at, say, an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund. So rather than buy the company itself, we can buy a whole industry, in one stock, right? So it's really to grow persons and educate persons as well from one level and bring them to the next level. In doing so as well, in understanding their needs, we also have to see, sometimes we have to unearth needs that are not expressed. And I've also come across that in my current role and in my previous roles, meaning my background, I also have an insurance background. I've seen persons come in who say, I just want to put aside X amount monthly. But when you look at the bigger picture, these persons might have children who will be going off to college or university in 5 years. They have no idea what university fees are like, right? So you really have to sit with these persons and say, hey, I know that you only want to put aside, say, $1,000 now, but do you know that in 5 years' time, you're going to be spending $30,000 monthly, and this $1,000 that you're doing right now is only going to cover you for 1 month. So it's really, my job really is wide scale. It encompasses everything. Because at the end of the day, you can't do without money, and you have to get your finances in order so that you don't have a mental breakdown at some point in time and it doesn't overwhelm you, right? So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Okay. So is it fair to say that you do your best and use your expertise to help people fulfill or achieve their financial goals, whether it be short-term or long-term?
Yes, most definitely.
And would you say, and I'm speaking from, or asking the question really from the perspective of many of my subscribers and audience members, because many of them have a high level of interest in investing in Jamaica, a cross section of investments, everything from investing in real estate, whether that be commercial or residential, to even buying a car. And so if I were somebody who was, say, a Jamaican or anybody who was living abroad considering moving back to Jamaica or perhaps investing in Jamaica and spending an extended period of time, where would a conversation of that nature start with you?
All right. So my initial recommendation would be get to know the island. If you don't know Jamaica, as you're a Jamaican, you understand Jamaica.
Yes.
So there is something within Jamaica itself. It's our spirit. You have to understand that and appreciate that before you do any investments whatsoever. Because a Jamaican, in my opinion, Jamaica is not, some persons say Jamaica is a destination, right? For me, being a Jamaican is about having an experience.
Right.
It's a journey. It's having the ups, it's the downs, it's the laughter, it's the tears, it's everything involved. And if you don't mind, I'd also like to put in some of my experience.
Please do.
When I was much younger, when I just had my daughter, this was early 2000. At the time, I was just a customer service person at Scotiabank. And I knew that later on, I would have to look at career options for her because I was raised in a background where, each generation go one step higher than the previous one. So at the time, I remember one time I was at home and just going through the paper and I saw an ad for real estate in St. Elizabeth. Knew nothing about St. Elizabeth. All I knew of St. Elizabeth was it was a breadbasket parish. That's all I knew of it. But I saw it and the following day, it was a Sunday, so the Monday I drove up to the place and I looked at it and it was literally a cow pasture that they were developing. And I looked at it and I saw the persons were just, persons who had bought the properties before, they were just starting out to build up on it. And I looked at it and I said, you know what? Based on how the units were going up, I knew right there and then that in another 5 or 10 years, based on the model that was being applied right there, I was like, if I buy a piece of land right here, this is going to appreciate at least twice the amount in another 5 to 10 years. Granted, I would need the funds for another 15 years for my child's education. And I could not afford it because I was investing in insurance and other fixed income securities. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take a chance on myself. And I paid my deposit, and I wasn't required to finance the property until another year. So that now gave me enough time to save up and, to start thinking about my mortgage payments. And hopefully, at the time, I was just hoping that I would get a promotion to be able to afford the property. And I made my deposit, and they put me on to the lending agencies, and I prayed about it. And that was 2003, 4, thereabout.
Okay.
And I don't want to say how much I paid for the property, but it was way less than $1 million. And persons like a year before me were buying that property, same properties in that neighborhood for like $40,000.
Oh, these are Jamaican dollars.
These are Jamaican
so
dollars, right? So we are talking about, at the time, could have been less than 1,000 US.
Okay.
Way less than 1,000 US. For persons who bought it before me, they were getting it for $1,000 or less for a quarter acre of land, right? When I got it, I would have paid probably about 3,000, the equivalent of 3,000 US. And I wasn't paying all of that up front. My deposit probably would have been about $300-400 at the time, right? And that was just money that I had saved up on in other accounts prior that I used as my deposit. And I made my mortgage payments. At the time, my mortgage payment was about 6,000 Jamaican dollars, which right now is less than $50 monthly. And I was able to maintain the property. All I had to do was keep the property clean, which I do just once per year. And the property I was able to sell for probably about 8 times the amount that I bought it at. And this was after about 15 years after, right? But I say that to say, with real estate, when you are looking at real estate in any spectrum, whether it be residential or commercial, you cannot lose. You cannot lose because at the end of the day, it's dirt. It's dirt. And it's what we decide to do with that dirt that really shows the value of it. And if you are smart enough, you can say, hey, I'm going to buy this property, this piece of dirt, and I am going to transform it, or I see it being able to transform and appreciate in value, whether 5 years or 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. You understand me?
Yep.
And that's how you can really make money from it. I met a gentleman earlier this year who bought a property in St. Mary. At the time when he bought it was in the 70s. St. Mary at that time was like one of the poorest places in Jamaica,
Okay.
right? Not developed at all. And I was just listening to the gentleman. He said, I bought it for probably a couple $100 or less. It was nothing. And now in that community now, you have some of the biggest persons, the biggest names in Jamaica having properties and lots nearby. So he's saying, I'm thinking of selling it, just a quarter acre of land for 18 million.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow. And he said, listen, when you're buying real estate, you're buying properties, buy the bush, buy places that are not yet developed.
Right.
Because if you buy somewhere that is already developed, how much further can you go in terms of value unless you're going to use it to make money? You're going to set up a business, generate an income from it so you can start benefiting from it. No. But if you're thinking about generational wealth, if you're thinking about the long term, that, hey, I know that something is going to happen here. It has to happen for the sake of development in another 10, 15 years. Buy it, leave it. Pay your property taxes, leave it. You can't go wrong.
Just from the couple of examples that you gave us, one recent, well, I guess they're both relatively recent actually. It seems like Jamaican real estate is a good place to invest. And does that remain true today?
It really does, especially, you know what, I'm not going to say yes. I would prefer for persons to look around. I remember when I left Kingston, I think it was 1999, either 1999 or 2000 when I left Kingston. When I left Kingston, there were single lane traffics on certain aspects of the road. The houses were structured a particular way. Now, if I should go back to Kingston, it's a totally different place. And you see on the news and you see on social media so much development that's going on. So if I were to answer your question directly and say, is Jamaica still a good place for investors? You can also look on the stock market. There is Cygnus Credit Investments, which now has launched a real estate arm of the company. We have First Rock. We have Epley that does real estate. So companies are being formed just for the purpose of real estate, building residential and commercial properties, right? And that's just Kingston alone that we're talking about right now. Granted, some of these companies are looking outside of Jamaica, because I know Epley is in Barbados. Cygnus Real Estate is now venturing into Puerto Rico as well. So there's a whole lot of development. Proven Investments also did a project in Mandeville, and in as much as the regular person saw that these units were very expensive, guess what? It sold out in a couple of minutes.
Wow.
Those units were sold out in minutes. So I think for investors, whether it be new investors or persons who want to come back to Jamaica, or you just want to you're thinking of just looking at something for retirement, or as I said, for generational wealth, because I'm really keen on that, I would say to you, look at those areas that have not yet been developed. Look at parishes or areas like Portland, which is developing. Look at St. Thomas, where they're thinking about now building a highway. They're doing a highway to connect Kingston, St. Thomas, and Portland. If the government is doing that, it means that other things are going to follow. Private sector will be venturing that side as well. So now is the most pivotal time, most interesting time to look at that area of the island, and not necessarily places that have already been developed. been there, done that.
Right.
For somebody new that is coming up, and especially young persons, look at those areas to say, you know, I can look at St. Thomas right now. Let me see what are the pros and the cons of going there. But before you go ahead and invest, I would say get a feel of the place, because it's going to resonate differently when you can say, you know what, I feel a bond with this area. So even if I were to buy a piece of property here, if I were to build up a business right here, it is something that I'm genuinely passionate about, right? So that would be my advice. And I am a lover of real estate. It has never failed me, and I will always be yes.
And I mean, I agree with you in terms of the demand that I'm just seeing from an anecdotal visual standpoint, and especially from the hospitality hotel industry.
Right.
You're seeing a lot of money come in internationally. And do you have like a pulse as to if there is like a single driving factor of this uptick in real estate in Jamaica, or is there a multitude of forces that is really driving this very high demand that in my opinion and what I've seen, I would say in the last 7 years, 5 to 7 years, like I've never seen investment and money come into Jamaica in the real estate like I've seen in this recent time?
In my very humble opinion, I think it has to do with the people, and I think it has to do with the culture. Jamaica, and definitely as well our location, right? So based on our location, we are like a few minutes away from the US, right? And not so far from South America. And, you know, we do have something special when you look at our history and all of that. But in terms of the island itself, you can go into every parish and feel as if you're at a different place in the world. So you will have persons who would be drawn to a Portland if they are nature lovers, if you love the river, if you love the mountains, if you love just the people. There are things in Portland that are not in any other aspect of Jamaica. There are things that are located in Portland that you cannot find anywhere else in the world. You know, there are people in Portland that I can say they are unique to Portland.
Yep.
You know, I've been to Portland twice, and I've always had a passion to go back to Portland. So maybe I do have a bit of bias there, but I do resonate there. You know what I mean? But when I go there, I see a pier. Ships, tourists come to Portland and dock there, and they're able to visit Portland. And prior to my first visit, I did not know that those things existed.
Are these commercial ships or private?
Commercial.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
There is a airstrip in Portland. I didn't know that until I visited. When I visited Portland, I did not see grills on homes. You know what I mean? So you go to a property and you can leave your door open. And Portland had the lowest crime rate, right? So everybody knew the importance of their industry. They understand that the tourist dollar means a lot to them, right? And so because of a lot of tourists coming to the parish, a lot of persons who came there grabbed a piece of real estate.
I see.
Granted, when you look at properties for sale in Portland, it is extreme. Well, let me not say expensive, but those properties are sold in U.S. currency.
I see.
Right?
I see.
You come to Westmoreland, you buy land in Jamaican dollars. You go to Portland, and that's U.S. currency, right? And the smallest piece of bush that you're talking about millions.
Wow.
And those farmers will tell you, well, you know, you can get this for 100,000 US or 200,000 US. And you might cringe a little and say, oh, but guess what? Somebody else is going to come in and offer them cash.
Wow.
You know, and it's worth it because the place is developing. The roads are being fixed. But you look at Portland now, and you look at Portland 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and it's two different places.
Yeah.
The same thing now that I'm looking with St. Thomas. My background is in St. Thomas because that's where I spent the first 10 years of my life. It was one of the poorest parishes. Everybody there just did farming, and that was it. Now, persons are generating income by the rivers, right? Every little small town that you go to have a river. That's a natural resource. Persons love the rivers right now. Persons are more nature-based, right? You do find a demand for that. Persons, a lot of us are, we're into the city day and night. We're stressed out. You go there for that peace. So persons who are in those areas now, they're using their properties for Airbnb. So they're also generating income from that. And you have the other persons within the communities now who are unskilled who will say, you know what, I'm going to be a tour guide. So they put their rafts together, and that's an industry by itself right now. And that's a multi-million-dollar industry right now. Yeah. You look at Falmouth right now, and certain places in Montego Bay. That's a huge industry right now. Just some bamboos put together, and you stroll down the river, and they give you a coconut water to drink, and you just feel relaxed. That is something that I think that we have to look into as well, because that's an industry right there.
Definitely.
So to answer your question, where is all of this coming from? Again, it's just the people. And I also want to say that technology, through the use of social media, has really driven up the demand for these type of industries and these properties. In that when persons go rafting, for example, and they take their pictures or their videos and they post it, and somebody is looking at it and say, oh, wow, this looks relaxing, this looks fun, never had this experience before. There is a market right there, right?
No, that's a fair answer. And you touched on like a multitude of aspects as it relates to real estate. And I agree with you. I absolutely love Portland. Anytime I can get away from Negril and from this area, that is absolutely my favorite place to go.
The air is different.
It is different, really untouched, untapped in many regards, even though, like you said, there is an uptick in demand for real estate there. You really do feel like you're going back to nature and to the basics in a very, very positive way.
Yes, it is.
And so, switching gears a little bit, we were talking off camera before about you were talking about basically building wealth for your family and that generational wealth. And we were talking off camera about, I guess I was expressing to you my personal experience with personal finance with my family. And I could tell you, like, my dad is a purebred serial entrepreneur, and he knows how to start businesses and be successful with businesses. And that's what he essentially did his entire life and was very successful at that. But when it came to teaching me and my brothers about personal finance, like, the number one thing is always save.
Yes.
And then 2, never buy anything with the money you don't have. Essentially, he doesn't believe in credit cards. Even the hotel here, he didn't get a bank loan or anything like that. And every mickle make a muckle. That's his saying. And that's how he built his businesses. So he would take the profits from the business and put back into the business. So we had 1 bungalow, 3 bungalows, then we had a building, then we had a pool, so on and so forth. And that's how he always did his business. And so he had invested, I think in the 90s, maybe in the stock market with his friend who was a stockbroker at the time. And he gave him X amount of dollars and to invest. And it doubled, then it tripled. And then my dad was like, oh, I want to sell. And when it came down to it, he didn't sell and he lost everything. And from that point, he never invested again in the stock market. And through that one bad experience, he just walked away. And so it wasn't until I went to college, I studied finance. Like, that's when I had my exposure to personal finance, and then also really beginning to understand how the world of money actually worked. And so it was from then, that's where I got my education from, formal education. And you were speaking with your daughter and rehashing your just the importance to you and passing it on to her of building this generational wealth. And so I guess a long story, I wanted you to, I guess, explain a little bit about the context of that conversation.
Right. All right. So for me, what I would encourage persons to do where financing and investing is concerned, do not think of it as something that you're going to do now and see how it pans out. It's a constant. It's almost like you're exercising. You do, you don't stop. That's what I mean. You never stop. So you might invest in some companies, in some stocks, and it doesn't do well, right? It doesn't mean that you stop entirely, right? So what I would encourage persons to do is what works for me. And I can only speak on my experience. I have stocks in the local market, and I also have stocks in the U.S. market. I do not invest in just one arena. I don't stick to, for example, tech stocks only. I do own Apple stocks, but I don't put all my eggs in that one basket, right? One of the things that happened back in the day for a lot of investors is that, you rely solely on the advice of your broker. And, it's what the broker says that you really go by. With the advent of technology, and you can get all the information literally at your fingertips right now. You just go on your phone and you put in whatever you need, and it's there for you. So now you're able to not only invest in one particular sector or one particular company, you can have as many stocks as possible in your portfolio. For me, what I do locally is I buy a lot of new companies when they are just coming to the market. I also buy a lot of blue chip companies. These are companies that have been around for a long period of time, tried, tested, and proven. Last year when the COVID pandemic hit, it presented an opportunity for me, whereby a lot of persons saw it differently. The opportunity was that a lot of these companies, the prices went down. So what I could do was to get more of these companies at the bottom out prices, right? So I know my budget each month for stocks. So I budget, say, $10,000 per month. So whereas before I would buy, say, a company for $100, this same company during the pandemic was selling for, say, $50 per unit. So I'm getting more units for the same money, right? And I do that repetitively every month. I keep building up and I build up and I build up. Another thing that I do is that when I get dividends from my company, I don't take it for myself. I buy more units in them. And I also bring my children into it. December last month, one of my companies that we buy, my son got his first dividend. And for him, it was his biggest dividend payout. Granted, it was not a lot of money. It was just 2,500 Jamaican dollars, but it was big enough for him to say, hey, I can use this and buy more units so that next year I can get more dividends. Or he could treat himself and go to the movies with it and, whatever he wanted to do. But me being his mom and his advanced financial person, I had to say to him, hey, use this and buy more units so that next year you can get more dividends out of it, right? And that is something that I teach him, and that is something that I practice for myself. So where we're discussing off camera, where we say, back then you buy a stock and the company belly up and then we never touch it again. I don't practice that. I've bought companies, I've bought stocks, and the price go right down. I have companies in my U.S. portfolio right now which I've lost more than half the value of it, but I'm not going to sell it. You understand me? My hope is that these companies will rebound because I know why I bought them. These are technology companies that, right now we have the pandemic and it's going to affect them, but after the pandemic, it will go back up, right? But even if it should belly up, then that's it. I didn't put that much into it. I didn't put all of my eggs in that basket anyhow. One of the advantages as well that we are seeing with technology is that it gives you the option to view the market holistically. So, as I said before, you can look at the individual companies, the Apple, the Microsoft and all of that. But if you are not so risk-loving, and you do want to take caution, you can buy the ETFs, exchange traded funds. And what that is that you buy a basket of companies within a sector. So you can buy health sector, financial sector, energy sector, whatever sector that there is, and you buy bits and pieces of all of the companies within that particular sector, and you buy it in that one group. Let me give you a prime example. Right now, Apple is trading at over $170 per unit.
Mm-hmm.
I can buy a technology sector for less than $100 per unit. Whenever Apple pays dividends, I make dividends from the stock itself directly, and I also make dividends from the sector itself, from the fund itself, right? Even if Apple should tank, there are other competitors and other companies within that basket that I am still able to make money from, right? Granted, these ETFs, they won't advance or appreciate as much as the individual companies, but I'm okay with that. If Apple increases, say, 10% for the year, my ETF will give me, say, 5 or 7%. I'm good with that, right? I'm good with that. But if Apple should go down, I'm okay because my ETF on this side has 20 other companies in it that won't kill all my investment. And if Apple goes on and I see the red flag from there, I can sell my ETF right there and then and invest into something else, right? So I would say to investors right now, spend a little time. It's not like back in the 90s when we were solely dependent on a broker or the news, or we had to sit down and read the financials of the company. Just can take months.
Right.
You know, the information is right there at our fingertips. We have MSNBC, we have Yahoo Finance, we have the CNN Money, we have all of those, we have the Motley Fool, we have all of them at our leisure right now. Just spend even 30 minutes each day and familiarize yourself with that. Another point, which is very, very important, is a little saying that a friend of mine's, as a quote, a friend of mine sent to me back in the day. She said, surround yourself with people who see goodness in you, potential in you, more than you see it in yourself. I add to that and say, surround yourself with people who you want to elevate to, or who can help to bring you to where you want to be. So if my goal right now is to grow my family, grow my business, grow my wealth, I'm not going to be surrounded by persons who are partiers and have the biggest tattoo and go to the nightlife. No, I'm going to get some of those persons in my little circle as well. Or if I want to be, balance up my life, I bring in some of those persons into my life and still have my partiers, or,
Right.
But you need to ensure that your circle has the right connections in it. For me right now, I have my insurance advisor's personal contact. So if I wake in the night and I have a need or a query or anything at all on my life insurance, if I want more coverage, I can message him, I can call him and say, hey, reach out to me like that, right? My realtor, I can pick up my phone and message a person anytime. Persons in construction, if I just get up and say, you know what, I'm going to add on another room to my house, I can message that person at my own leisure. Not because that I'm superior or I have this big army around me, but because I structure my life in such a way that whatever I need is there for me, and it doesn't cost a cent to do that. It doesn't cost any money to be nice. It doesn't cost any money to be a good person. When you're a good person, a great person, and you give that out, it tends to come back to you. So to everybody out there in social media world, I say to you, it's not difficult to reach out to good, genuine persons in Jamaica or any part of the island or anywhere in the world at all to get connections. It doesn't cost.
And I just want to put a pause real quick because you just hit us with like a whole plethora of gems right there. And so I just want to go back on a few of them. And so you start with, in terms of like the people you say that you keep around you. And as the saying goes, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I truly, truly believe in that. And I always try, just like you said, for lack of a better word or lack of a better term, I try to surround myself with people who are better than me.
Yes.
And better than me in a
Yes.
certain skill
Yes.
or a certain attribute that I would like to attain. I think that's important. And that and sometimes, especially in this day and age, they may not necessarily have to be physically around you, but there could be this people, like you said, you pick up the phone, you call and you talk to, because that energy and that wavelength, it's going to feed off on you. Just like you said with the example of the partiers and this and that, like that energy is going to feed off on you, and that's going to become who you are. Moving back a little bit, when you were talking about just that lesson that you gave with your son about reinvesting the dividends, and I don't know how old your son is, but that is just so incredibly powerful. The implementing these financial values at a young age, and just being able to teach our children about personal finance and that subject, like that in itself is just so important in building generational wealth and having that knowledge. And like I said, it wasn't until, and no diss to my mom and my dad or anything like that. They knew what they knew, and they taught us what they knew at that time. And both my parents were barefoot children. My mom grew up in a village in Fiji, like literally like in a paper hut. That was her house and where she grew up. And same thing with my dad, went to school barefoot, and they both came up the way that they did. And so they weren't exposed to these things. And I know your daughter is off camera. I mean, I can't tell you like how lucky she is to have a mother who has this knowledge and is passing it on to her, because again, I didn't begin to have this type of personal finance knowledge or exposure probably until I was 21, 22. And that was through my own education of going to college. And thankfully my dad and mom did see the importance of an education. And so therefore now my children at a young age, just like you are doing with your children, I'm going to pass on the importance of these the financial lessons that I have learned and the pain that I've gone through with finances, but then also on the personal finance side. So I wanted to commend you on that, and just also to re-emphasize just the importance of passing on that knowledge to the next generation.
That's true.
And as you were going into the options that we have, and with ETFs and with the stock market, both here in Jamaica and abroad, as a local Jamaican, do you have access to the international markets?
We do.
You do?
Yes.
Through Sagicor Investments?
Through Sagicor Investments. Okay. So we're able to trade from the New York Stock Exchange, companies that are listed there. But let me just say, to the younger generation, I remember when I was much younger, weird enough, my birthday is Christmas Eve. So when that time of the year come, you're expecting gifts, and I would never get any gifts because the next day is Christmas Day and you expect a gift. And so growing up, I always had that emptiness. But as I got a little older, I was like, you know what? I don't want the gifts because the gifts don't mean much to me. So what I would do, what I would get a lot of the time would be money. And then I would take the money and I would buy ice cream or clothes and so on. And then when I started working and started gaining the knowledge and the experience and looking at other persons, looking at my clients, and they would also give me a lot of advice, weird enough. What I decided to do was not to necessarily buy clothes and shoes and all of that with the money. What I would do is I would invest the money. And what I do now, anytime my kids get money is for any holiday period at all or birthdays and so on, I take that money and I buy stocks for them. So that is something that I do with my son as well. So he did a work program last year. And when he got his pay, I would say to him, okay, how much of it are you going to use to buy your stocks? Because this is what you're going to use now to fund your education. I'll help you to a point, but you're going to help yourself as well. And so when he just started out, he was a little hesitant about it. But I said to him, you're a businessman. He's now 18. I said, you're a businessman, you're a trader. And I made him know what he is. He's not a child anymore. Right. He's not a baby. He's my client. And I said, you're going to use your money now and you're going to build yourself. And I showed him how. I said, this year you're going to have $10,000. Even if the value should drop to $8,000, it's okay because you're going to be making dividends from it. And once the company makes a profit, this is how you're going to be making money from it. So now he's understanding at a young age that you don't wait until you're older,
right,
or wait until you have a degree, or wait till you go to college to get this experience. Every day presents an opportunity to learn and to build your knowledge base from. For our clients, I say to you, it is so easy. I wish I had this knowledge 30 years ago, not to want to give away my age. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I wish I had this knowledge then, that it was so simple. But what happened, is that back in the day, there was a stigma associated with the stock market. It was just for the rich.
right.
It was just for the elites, And, you listen to the business news in the evening, and nobody in my household or in my circle knew what they were talking about.
Yep.
You listen to the financial news and you are clueless. All you know is that after the financial news, then we'll probably move on to the weather, to sports. It's just one slot. But as the advance of technology and more companies coming out to the markets and so on, persons being more aware, you realize that, it wasn't that bad after all. And because somebody lost money in this particular company doesn't mean they lost everything.
Right.
I had a situation about 3 years ago where a client of mine, his father had passed, and the father had bought some Carib cement stocks for the family in 1991, 92, thereabout. And at that time, Carib cement was a penny stock. And that company has been through the rigors.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in my working life where financial houses was making recommendation to clients to sell the stock, dump the stock. It wasn't really going anywhere because something at the time was happening with the company. But that gentleman did not sell the stocks at all because he knew that it was for generational wealth. He was going to pass it on when he died. So when the son came to me now with the stock certificates and say, okay, my dad passed and I want to transfer to a different account, and we're going through the probate and all of that, I just had a moment and I was like, if I had this, or if my grandmother or my mother knew about this,
right,
then our lives would have been way different, right? And I looked at that deceased gentleman as a brilliant man because he would have bought those stocks for $100 or less back then. And when the certificates were brought to me, these were millions of dollars were in stocks, right? And he would have also been earning dividends on them during the period of time that he had it. So when the gentleman brought it in the stock certificates to me, I asked him, are you going to sell the stocks? And he said, no. Wow. It has to go in my name. And then when I die, I pass it on to my children, and I'm like, yeah. The change is happening. It's not happening as much, but it is happening.
I think that's an amazing story because, one, it's another great example of a successful generational wealth strategy.
Right.
And then two, it also, like as you were addressing young people, like the power of compounding. is incredible, And the younger you start, the better off you are. And I mean, I really didn't really start getting into the world of finance in terms of getting outside of academia and into the practical until I'm 37 now, until I was in my, I want to say early 30s, maybe like 30, 31, 32, so not even that too long ago, I would say. But again, like you said, I wish I knew, I wish I was a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more risk taking, and then also trying to get that knowledge. So what are the requirements to start investing in the Jamaican Stock Exchange?
All right. So as it is present, the requirements are very basic. Persons would be amazed at what you need. You just need a valid identification. your tax registration, whether it be your TRN, your tax registration number, or your social security. So persons in the US, they can actually participate on our local stock exchange. And proof of address and your source of funds or your proof of income, which is your last month's pay slip or a job letter, addressed to Sagicor Investments if you so desire. And a minimum of 5,000 Jamaican dollars if you're going to invest in Jamaican currency, or 50 US dollars if you are going to be you're trading in US stocks.
So you don't need you don't need to be a millionaire or have $1 million.
You do not. And that is the most important thing I want persons to know. Right now, I have students who are trading. I have persons who go on the work and travel program who also take that income and invest in the market. I have persons who are retired and need an additional income, and they use their dividends as income as well. And just general persons who are intrigued, interested in the market. It's there for everyone. But as I said before, it's not a one size cap fits everybody. Mm-hmm. So we really want our clients to reach out to us, reach out to me, and we can then tailor something specific to your need.
Okay, excellent. Mm-hmm. And there's so many other questions I want to ask you. And I honestly, we can keep going about the subject of finance on and on, because it just
I just want to say though that the requirements for investing is the same requirements for someone who wants to buy real estate, who wants to invest in the market. If you want a loan, mm-hmm. if you want a mortgage, it's the same requirement. That's a basic requirement. Whereas mortgages or loans are concerned, financial companies are just mostly interested in one, are you a financially responsible person? Meaning, do you have good credit mm-hmm. and your ability to repay the loan? That's it. It's not as strenuous as we would actually believe it is. So the same thing for investments as well. If you have $5,000, $1,000, $1 million, the basic requirements are the same. And we are there to bring you from one point to another, to the next level. And I want to say to parents, it's so important. Once you have a child or you're responsible for someone else, you have to put your finances and your thought process along that line as well, all right? If you are making $10,000 per month, if you're making $1,000 per month, live below your means.
Right.
Do not live above your means. And when I say live below your means, I want you to think about putting yourself in that scope where another 5 or 10 years, your current annual income might be your annual expense then. You understand me?
Yeah.
What I am looking at now at my tuitions that I'm paying for my daughter and my son, if I was not responsible and if I wasn't thinking a particular line a couple of years ago, I would be suffering. And I also want to say that the most gut-wrenching thing for me would have been knowing that my daughter and my son also, these are scholarship kids. These are top students, mm-hmm. More so my daughter than my son, Lord Jesus, my son. But they have potential. Mm-hmm. And for me to have seen where primarily my daughter graduated from high school, being a top student, and me not being able to fund the next level of her education mm-hmm. or her career, that would have been my biggest failure. And so I say to persons, no matter where you are in your life right now, reach out to somebody else who can assist you to move from one level to the next level. And you can do so by using inner skills that you have, Right now with social media, and it is such a powerful tool, persons are now able to sell hairdos. Mm-hmm. You can literally create an industry through makeup. Right? Speaking. All these little things. You want somebody to go out to the river with. You want to go out on an adventure with. that's an industry right there.
Right.
Reach out to persons that can help you to grow and to guide you. And because you can't do everything on your own.
No.
And I've been blessed to have had clients and persons who are older than me as my mentors who have been able to push my thought process and to take me out of that comfort zone and to be able to take risk and believe in myself.
And I think that's amazing advice that you're giving out to everyone, and probably a good note to kind of bring things to a close here. And we touched on a plethora of different topics in the world of finance, and I know that we can get a lot deeper on many of those different avenues that we touched on. I mean, we didn't even really get into the residential real estate and the mortgages and that sort of thing, and perhaps sometime in the future we can. But in the meantime, if you would, could you share your contact information with people who would like to get maybe a little bit more into some of the subject matters?
For certain. So I am actually an advisor who responds to my clients. I am someone that you can contact at any time because as I said before, I can reach out to my advisors for anything. So my telephone number is 876-809-0084. And my email address is Jermin, Jermin _Vanzie, Vanzie at Sagicor.com.
Okay, excellent. And like I said before, I know that there are going to be requests for certain subject matters, and I would love to have you back on the show to dive into these different areas. Yes. So with that, Jermin with a J.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us here today and sitting down with me. And thank you all out there for joining us and watching the show today. I know I learned so much today having this discussion, and I hope you did as well. And of course, if you found any value in today's video and you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It definitely helps out a whole lot. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.